Your first steps changed your life, then vanished from memory. Why can you remember almost none of your own beginning? It was not because your brain recorded nothing. Picture yourself lying beneath a bright mobile. A ribbon connects one ankle to the hanging shapes. You kick, the mobile moves. Soon, you kick more whenever the ribbon returns. In 1980, Carolyn Rovee-Collier used this setup to test infant memory. After a delay, the familiar setup could bring the kicking back. Your early brain had learned a connection. The learning remained. The scene did not. That contradiction changes the mystery completely. Your earliest years are not blank because nothing entered your brain. Something happens between early learning and your adult attempt to look back. The problem is partly access. A memory can form while its path back remains fragile. If your early brain kept something, why can't you retrieve it now? Memory is not one switch waiting for a birthday. You can learn an action without keeping a lifelong scene. You can recognize something without remembering your first meeting with it. Replaying your personal past requires something harder. Your brain must preserve an event as something that happened to you. That ability is called autobiographical memory. The widespread blank before your earliest personal memories has another name. Researchers call it infantile amnesia. Your remembered life begins later than your learning life. That does not mean every early memory disappears immediately. Young children sometimes describe events from their earlier years. As they grow, some of those memories become unreachable. The event was available once. Later, it was not. This means your adult blank is not simply a recording failure. Your changing mind also changes what can be found. The sharper question is not whether your baby brain worked. It clearly did. The question is what an adult memory needs that early learning lacks. To keep one event, your brain must join separate pieces. Imagine a red cup, a barking dog, your kitchen, and yesterday. Each piece comes from a different part of the experience. Your brain must bind them into one retrievable moment. A curved structure deep inside your brain helps do this. It is called the hippocampus. It links parts of an experience for later retrieval. However, the hippocampus never works alone. It depends on a wider network across your brain. During your earliest years, that network is still growing and reorganizing. Those changes support enormous amounts of new learning. They may also make some early event patterns harder to reach later. The original links were formed inside a rapidly changing system. Years later, your adult brain searches using a different system. That helps explain the missing scenes. It does not explain everything. Some young children can remember events before later losing access. Their memory network was already working well enough to retrieve them. Something else changes how those events become searchable. That next change arrives through words. Words give your brain more ways to find an event. They name objects and place actions into a tellable order. Simcock and Hain tested this with a strange machine. Young children watched the machine appear to shrink toys. They placed a large object inside. They activated the machine. Then a smaller matching object appeared. Months later, the children met the machine again. Researchers asked them to explain what had happened. The children struggled to describe the whole event, yet their hands revealed more. They could reenact parts of the sequence using the objects. Then came the important split. Some children had learned useful new words after the original event. Those newer words still did not appear in their account. Later language could not simply translate the earlier experience. The memory reflected the words available when the event first happened. This suggests language does more than decorate a finished memory. It may help organize an experience for later telling. However, language cannot be the whole answer. The children still demonstrated details they could not clearly describe. Their learning survived inside actions. Their spoken story remained thin. Your earliest experiences may not exist as silent adult stories awaiting translation. Even a named event needs a place inside your personal timeline. That requires more than words. It requires a steady sense of who experienced them. Knowing words still does not place an event inside your life. Picture yourself completing the same bedtime routine every night. You climb beneath the blanket before anyone asks. You know every step, yet you may not place yesterday's bedtime on a timeline. You cannot easily explain what came before or after it. Your sense of yourself across time develops gradually. Researchers suggest this growing self helps organize personal memories. The event becomes something that happened to you. Conversations with caregivers can strengthen that structure. They add names, order, causes, and one crucial detail. You did this. Those conversations help turn an experience into a personal account. However, they do not create a perfect record. Later suggestions can reshape what you eventually report. A family story may even become hard to separate from memory. Before you can tell your story, you are already living it. The missing ingredient is not another sight or sound. It is a steadier version of you, who can claim the moment. Yet one question remains: when the conscious scene disappears, does every effect disappear too? Here's the reveal. The scene can vanish. The learning can remain. Conscious recall is not the only way your past continues. One memory system lets you replay an event from your viewpoint. Others support habits, familiarity, expectations, and learned emotional responses. Consider a voice heard during the same soothing routine each day. Its rhythm becomes familiar before you can name the speaker. In one experiment, newborns changed their sucking patterns to hear their mother's voice. They responded to something familiar. They did not need a personal story about meeting her. That recognition does not give you an adult scene of first hearing her. The response remains available. The episode does not. This breaks the rule you probably assumed. No scene does not mean no effect. Early experiences may influence what later feels familiar or expected. They might also contribute to learned emotional responses. That does not prove one adult fear began during a forgotten infant moment. Memory does not allow that simple conclusion. Still, your earliest relationships may leave patterns without leaving mental pictures. Infantile amnesia hides access to scenes without erasing every learned trace. You may lose the picture. You may keep the pattern. Now your missing beginning looks different. It is not empty. It continues in forms you cannot consciously replay. Find one photograph of yourself as a baby. Study the room behind you. Can you actually remember its temperature, sounds, or smell? You probably know several facts about that moment. A caption may have supplied the place and date. A family story may have supplied what happened next. Those details can feel woven into the memory itself. Yet knowing an event happened is not replaying it. The photograph cannot return your first steps or first words. It shows how your mind bridges an unseen beginning. Your adult story combines scenes, facts, pictures, and borrowed accounts. You did not begin when your first clear memory appeared. Your life was already leaving marks before your story had words. Those first years are not empty spaces. They belong to your lived past, even without replayable scenes. Your identity feels continuous, although its beginning comes mostly from evidence. Your first years are missing from your story, not your life. If remembering rebuilds the past, what changes whenever you retell it? Subscribe to Why begins for the next question about your mind.